The ships appeared without warning on a Tuesday morning in March 2147. They were massive and gleaming, and they hung in the sky above every major city on Earth like silent judges. People stopped in the streets and pointed upward. Children pressed their faces against windows. News channels went live within minutes and the world held its breath. The largest ship descended slowly over the United Nations headquarters in New Geneva. It was beautiful in a strange way, with surfaces that seemed to shift between solid and liquid. The landing created no sound and no wind. The ship simply settled onto the plaza as if gravity had gently placed it there. A door opened in the side of the vessel. Light spilled out, but it was not harsh. It was soft and welcoming. A figure emerged and walked down a ramp that formed itself from nothing. Ambassador Vorath was tall and thin with skin that looked like polished crystal. He had 6 eyes arranged in pairs down his elongated face. His movements were graceful and deliberate. Behind him came others of different species. Some had fur and some had scales, and some looked like they were made of living metal. Inside the United Nations Assembly Hall, the world leaders had gathered in record time. President Helen Carter sat in the front row representing the North American Union. She was a woman in her 50s with gray hair pulled back in a practical bun. Her face showed nothing but polite interest. Next to her sat General Kyle Murphy, who commanded the Earth Defense Force. He was a broad-shouldered man with dark skin and sharp eyes that missed nothing. His uniform was crisp and decorated with medals from conflicts most people had forgotten. Vorath walked to the center of the chamber. His translator device activated and his voice filled the room. It was pleasant and calm, like a teacher speaking to young students. "People of Earth," Vorath began, "we come to you today with momentous news. The Galactic Council has been watching your species for many years. We have observed your progress with great interest and some concern. You have achieved spaceflight and you have begun to explore your local system. These are impressive accomplishments for such a young civilization." He paused and his multiple eyes swept across the assembled humans. "However, you must understand that the universe, beyond your small system, is dangerous. There are threats that you cannot imagine. The Calreth swarm moves through this sector, consuming all biological matter in its path. The Void Reapers hunt for primitive worlds to strip of resources. The Hive Collective seeks new species to assimilate. You are like children playing in a jungle filled with predators." Captain Lisa Grant sat 3 rows back. She was the youngest captain in the Earth Defense Force at 32 years old. Her red hair was cut short for practical reasons, and her green eyes watched Vorath with an expression that might have been amusement. Next to her, Commander Jake Peterson shifted in his seat. He was blond and athletic and had the look of someone trying very hard not to laugh. "We have come to offer you protection," Vorath continued. "The Galactic Council extends membership to your world. We will station our defense fleets in your solar system. Our ships will patrol your space. Our technology will shield your planet. We will guard you against all threats, both known and unknown." The chamber remained silent. Every human face was attentive and respectful. "In return, we ask only for your cooperation. You must accept our guidance in all military matters. Your weapons development will cease as it will no longer be necessary. Our peacekeepers will maintain order and security. Our laws will become your laws in matters of galactic importance. This is how we protect all young species until they are ready to stand on their own." Vorath smiled in a way that his species had learned humans found reassuring. "We understand this is much to consider. However, time is critical. The Calreth swarm will reach this sector within the year. Without our protection, your species will not survive. We have seen it happen to others who refused our help. The galaxy is vast and cold and unforgiving. You need us." President Carter raised her hand slowly. Vorath gestured for her to speak. "Ambassador Vorath, this is indeed a generous offer. We are honored that the Galactic Council has taken such interest in our welfare. May I ask how many species currently enjoy your protection?" 43 civilizations are under Council protection," Vorath replied with pride. "All have prospered under our guidance. And how many of those 43 maintain their own military forces?" Vorath's expression shifted slightly. "None. It is unnecessary when the Council provides complete security. Resources are better spent on cultural development and scientific research within approved parameters." Helen Carter nodded thoughtfully. General Murphy leaned back in his chair. His face remained neutral, but his fingers drummed once on the armrest. "Perhaps you would like to see our defense capabilities," Helen suggested, "so you can better assess our current situation and how your forces might integrate with ours. We have already scanned your system." Vorath said gently. We know what you have. Primitive orbital platforms, chemical rocket propulsion, early fusion reactors,
Kinetic weapons.
It is admirable for your development level, but wholly inadequate for what is coming. Captain Lisa Grant leaned close to Commander Jake Peterson. Her whisper was barely audible. Really? The word was soft, but it carried to the people around them. A ripple went through the human delegation like a stone dropped in still water. Shoulders shook slightly. Hands moved to cover mouths. Eyes crinkled at the corners. Vorath's translator chip picked up the word but struggled with the context. The tone suggested skepticism, but the humans' faces remained polite and attentive. He found their expressions difficult to read. You find something amusing? Vorath asked carefully. Not at all, Ambassador, Helen Carter said smoothly. We simply need time to discuss your offer among ourselves and with our people. This is not a decision to be made hastily. Perhaps while we deliberate, you and your delegation would accept our hospitality. We can show you our world and our facilities. Lieutenant Sophie Andrews will serve as your guide. A young woman stood from her position near the back. She wore the dark blue uniform of the Earth Defense Force with a single silver bar on her collar. Her brown hair was pulled into a ponytail, and her smile was bright and friendly. I would be honored to show you around, Sophie said cheerfully. We have some really interesting things I think you'll enjoy seeing. Vorath agreed. He was certain that once he toured Earth's primitive defenses, the humans would understand how desperately they needed Council protection. Young species always resisted at first. Pride was a common trait among emerging civilizations, but reality would convince them soon enough. The delegation dispersed. The Galactic Council members were escorted to prepared quarters. The human leaders remained behind in small groups, speaking quietly among themselves. General Kyle Murphy stood with Admiral Ryan Cooper near the chamber's large windows. Ryan was older than Kyle, with gray hair and a weathered face that had seen too many years in space. They have no idea, Ryan said quietly. Should we tell them? Kyle asked. And spoil the surprise? Besides, they wouldn't believe us anyway. Better to show them. Lisa's going to have fun with this. Sophie, too. Did you see her face? She's already planning the grand tour. Helen Carter joined them. She looked out at the alien ship still resting in the plaza. How long do you think before they figure it out? She asked. Depends on how much Sophie decides to show them, Kyle replied. Could be hours or could be days. The council means well, Helen said. They genuinely think they're helping. Most conquerors do, Ryan observed. They just dress it up in prettier words. We're not going to embarrass them, are we? Helen asked. That would be unkind. No, Kyle assured her. We'll be very polite, very professional. We'll just show them the truth and let them draw their own conclusions. And if they insist on protecting us anyway? The three humans looked at each other. Small smiles appeared on their faces. Then we'll politely decline, Kyle said. And if they insist further, we'll show them why that would be a very bad idea. Outside the chamber, Lieutenant Sophie Andrews was already introducing herself to Vorath and his military assessment team. She was enthusiastic and friendly and completely disarming. I'm so excited to show you everything, she said brightly. We have the most amazing facilities. Some of them are really old, like almost 60 years, but we keep them running because they're still useful. And then we have the new stuff, which is just incredible. When would you like to start the tour? Vorath looked down at the small human. She barely reached his chest, and her enthusiasm seemed genuine if somewhat naive. We can begin immediately if you are ready, he said kindly. Perfect. Let's start with the orbital platforms. They're not much, but you have to start somewhere, right? As they walked toward the transport that would take them to the spaceport, Sophie chatted constantly about Earth's history and culture and the weather and a dozen other topics. Vorath listened politely while his military observer Krell scanned everything with instruments built into his armored suit. None of them noticed the way Sophie's cheerful expression never quite reached her eyes. None of them saw the small gesture she made to the security team watching from a distance. None of them realized that the tour they were about to receive had been carefully planned and rehearsed. Earth was about to teach the Galactic Council a lesson they would never forget, but it would be done with smiles and courtesy, and the kind of hospitality that made it impossible to take offense until it was far too late to do anything about it. The shuttle lifted, off from New Geneva with barely a whisper of sound. Lieutenant Sophie Andrews sat in the pilot seat with her hands dancing across controls that looked deceptively simple. Behind her in the passenger compartment, Ambassador Vorath sat with his military assessment team. Krell, the four-armed warrior, occupied 2 seats with his bulk. Next to him sat Vex, a younger council member, whose species resembled something between a bird and a reptile. 3 other observers from different worlds completed the group. "We'll reach Outpost 7 in about 20 minutes, Sophie called back cheerfully. "It's one of our older defense platforms. We built it back in 2089, so it's pretty ancient by our standards, but it still does the job." The shuttle climbed through Earth's atmosphere and broke into orbit. The planet curved below them, blue and white and green. Vorath had seen many worlds, but he had to admit Earth was particularly beautiful. Perhaps that was why the Council felt such obligation to protect it. Outpost 7 appeared ahead of them. It was a blocky structure maybe 200 meters across, with solar panels extending like wings. Gun barrels protruded from its surface at regular intervals. The whole thing looked functional but unremarkable. "Here we are," Sophie announced as she brought the shuttle alongside. "Not much to look at, I know, but she's reliable." They docked and entered through an airlock. The interior was clean but utilitarian. Metal floors and walls, exposed pipes and conduits. Everything painted in shades of gray and white. A crew of 12 humans worked at various stations. They looked up and nodded as the visitors entered, but quickly returned to their tasks. Sophie led them to the command center. "These are our primary weapons. Railguns, mostly. They fire projectiles using electromagnetic acceleration. The targeting system is computer-assisted, but we can switch to manual if needed. Range is about 50,000 kilometers, give or take." Krell scanned the equipment with his instruments. His forearms moved independently, checking different systems. After a moment, he turned to Vorath and spoke in their own language, which the translators rendered for everyone. "Primitive, as expected. The technology is at least 40 years behind Council standard. The power systems are inefficient. The weapons are kinetic rather than energy-based. This confirms our initial assessment. They cannot defend themselves against any serious threat." Sophie smiled pleasantly as if she had not understood the insult. "Would you like to see more? We have other installations throughout the system." "That would be instructive," Vorath said gently. He felt a mixture of pity and concern for these naive humans. They seemed proud of their simple weapons, but they truly had no idea what dangers lurked in the galaxy. They returned to the shuttle, and Sophie plotted a course deeper into the solar system. "We'll head out past Mars. There's something out in the asteroid belt you might find interesting." The journey took longer. Sophie kept up a steady stream of conversation about Earth's space program in the early days of orbital construction, and how difficult it had been to establish permanent stations. She talked about the first Mars colony and the mining operations on various moons, and the challenges of maintaining equipment in hard vacuum. Vorath listened politely. Vex asked occasional questions about Earth's culture and history. Krell remained silent and watchful. They passed Mars with its red surface dotted with domed settlements. They entered the asteroid belt where chunks of rock tumbled in their ancient orbits. Sophie guided the shuttle between the larger asteroids with casual skill. "Okay, we're almost there," she said. "This is one of my favorite places. Watch this." She entered a command into her console. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the empty space around them began to change. Shapes materialized out of nowhere. First one, then 10, then dozens, then hundreds. Platforms of various sizes appeared in a vast network stretching in all directions. Some were as small as the shuttle. Others were massive structures kilometers across. They had been invisible moments before, but now they filled the view screens. Krell's skin changed color rapidly, cycling through shades that indicated shock and confusion. Vex made a chirping sound that the translator rendered as profound surprise. Vorath felt his confidence begin to crack. "Welcome to the outer ring," Sophie said brightly. "This is our first line of real defense. We have about 1,500 platforms out here, all equipped with stealth systems. The ones you're looking at are just the weapons. There are another 2,000 sensor stations and communication relays you still can't see." "But how?" Vorath managed. "Our scans showed nothing." "Oh, the stealth systems? Yeah, we're pretty proud of those. They bend electromagnetic radiation around the platform, so sensors just see empty space. We got the basic idea from studying octopus camouflage, actually. Nature is a great teacher." Krell activated every scanner he had. The readings came back and his color shifted again. "These weapons, they are not kinetic. They are converting matter directly into energy." "Right," Sophie confirmed. "Each platform can pull in asteroids and break them down at the molecular level. The matter gets converted into directed energy beams. Basically, we turned the entire asteroid belt into ammunition. Seemed wasteful to let all those resources just float around doing nothing. She brought the shuttle closer to one of the larger platforms. Through the view screen, they could see the complex machinery. Capture arrays that could grab asteroids, processing chambers where rock was reduced to component atoms, energy projectors that could focus the resulting power into beams capable of cutting through ship hulls like paper. "How long has this been here?" Vorath asked quietly. "We started construction about 70 years ago. Took us maybe 20 years to get the full network operational. We've been upgrading and expanding ever since. The newer platforms are about 8 times more efficient than the original designs." Vex spoke up with genuine curiosity. "Why did you not tell us about this? Why let us think you were defenseless?" Sophie turned in her seat to look at them. Her smile was still friendly, but her eyes were sharp. "You never asked. You scanned from the edge of the system, looked at our oldest and most obvious installations, and assumed you knew everything. We learned a long time ago that people see what they expect to see." The shuttle moved away from the outer ring and Sophie set a course for Earth's moon. "Now let me show you something really fun." During the 2-hour flight, Krell ran calculations on his equipment. He kept shaking his head as if the numbers could not be correct. Vorath sat in silence watching the human's moon grow larger in the view screen. It looked normal. Gray and cratered and ancient. "The moon is special to us," Sophie said as they approached. "It's been in our sky since before humans existed. We've written poems about it and songs and stories. When we first landed there in 1969, it was one of the proudest moments in our history. We know of your early lunar missions," Vorath said. "They were impressive for chemical rocket technology. Right, well, we've come a long way since then. Watch." Sophie transmitted a code. The moon's surface began to open. Sections of the gray regolith slid aside, revealing massive structures beneath. Hangar doors kilometers wide. Cannon arrays that rose on hydraulic pillars. Dry docks where ships were being constructed. Fusion reactors that pulsed with barely contained power. "We started hollowing it out in 2087, Sophie explained casually. Took about 15 years to move enough material. The core is now a massive fusion reactor. Powers pretty much everything you see plus most of our outer system installations." A ship emerged from one of the hangars. It was enormous, easily 5 kilometers long and bristling with weapons. Its hull was dark and angular, designed to minimize sensor reflection. It moved with ponderous grace, taking up a position in lunar orbit. "That's the EDS Defiant," Sophie said with obvious pride. "Dreadnought class. We have 11 more just like her, plus about 200 smaller capital ships and maybe 1,000 support vessels, all built right here in lunar shipyards." Krell's translator crackled as he tried to speak. His voice came out strained. "This is not possible. Your species only achieved spaceflight 2 centuries ago. Building weapons of this scale requires technological infrastructure that takes millennia to develop." "Well," Sophie said thoughtfully, "we were pretty motivated. See, after we nearly destroyed ourselves with nuclear weapons in the 20th century, we had a collective realization. Either we grew up and started working together, or we were going to extinct ourselves. So we chose to grow up." She guided the shuttle into one of the lunar hangars. The interior was vast and brightly lit. Hundreds of humans in uniform moved between ships and equipment. Everything was organized and efficient. The scale of the operation was staggering. They docked and Sophie led them onto an observation platform overlooking the main construction bay. Below them, a new ship was taking shape. Robots and humans worked together, welding and fitting and testing. The air hummed with purposeful energy. "This is what we do," Sophie said simply. "We build. We prepare. We make sure that nobody ever catches us defenseless. Our history taught us that survival means being ready for anything." Vorath looked at the activity below. He looked at the massive ships hanging in their berths. He looked at Sophie's casual confidence. Everything he thought he knew about humanity was crumbling. "Ambassador," Krell said quietly, "we need to contact the Council immediately. Our intelligence was catastrophically wrong." "I think that can wait," Vorath replied slowly. "Lieutenant Andrews, I believe we need to see more. I need to understand how this happened. How your species went from primitive rockets to this in such a short time." Sophie nodded. "I can arrange that. Admiral Ryan Cooper is back on Earth. He teaches military history at the Defense Academy. I think you two should talk. He can explain our development better than I can." "Yes," Vorath said. "I would like that very much." As they returned to the shuttle, Vorath caught Vex staring at him. The younger counselor's expression was difficult to read, but it seemed to contain both fear and excitement. "Sir, what does this mean?" Vex asked. "It means," Vorath said heavily, "that we made a terrible mistake. We thought we were offering protection to children. Instead, we may have just insulted something far more dangerous than we imagined." Sophie overheard but said nothing. She simply smiled that same friendly smile and began the flight back to Earth. Behind them, the moon slowly closed its surface, hiding the military might beneath. But everyone in the shuttle knew the truth now. Earth was not defenseless. Earth had never been defenseless. Earth had simply been waiting to see what the galaxy wanted before deciding how to respond. And that patience, more than anything else, worried Vorath deeply. Admiral Ryan Cooper met them in a classroom at the Earth Defense Academy in Colorado. The room was simple, with rows of seats facing a large holographic display. Ryan was in his 60s with silver hair and a face marked by years of service. He wore his uniform without decoration except for a single ribbon that Vorath did not recognize. His handshake was firm and his eyes were kind, but there was something behind them that suggested he had seen things the ambassador could not imagine. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us, Admiral," Vorath said as they settled into seats. "Lieutenant Andrews suggested you could help us understand humanity's military development." "I can try," Ryan replied. "Though I should warn you, the story isn't always pleasant. Coffee, anyone?" He poured himself a cup from a pot that sat on his desk. The gesture was so casual and domestic that it seemed out of place in a military academy. Krell declined. Vex accepted out of curiosity and immediately regretted it when the bitter liquid touched his tongue. "So," Ryan began as he activated the holographic display, "you want to know how we got from throwing rocks to hollowing out moons in just a few thousand years? The short answer is practice. The long answer is going to take a while." The display lit up with images of early humans, stone tools and cave paintings, and small tribes gathered around fires. "We started like most species, I imagine, small groups competing for resources. But humans had a particular talent. We were very, very good at killing each other. Not just for food or territory, but for ideas and beliefs, and sometimes just because we were angry." Images flashed past showing ancient battles, Bronze Age warfare, iron weapons, cavalry charges, castle sieges. The progression was relentless and bloody. Rome conquered most of Europe and the Mediterranean. The Mongols swept across Asia. Empires rose and fell, and each one taught us new ways to fight, new tactics, new weapons, new strategies. We got better at organization and logistics and combined arms warfare. Vorath watched with growing unease. The humans in these images were brutal and efficient. They fought with a creativity that seemed almost artistic in its violence. "Then we hit the modern era," Ryan continued. The display shifted to show muskets and cannons. Gunpowder changed everything. Suddenly, a peasant with a gun could kill a knight in full armor. Warfare became industrial. We started thinking about production capacity and supply chains and total war. Images of the Napoleonic Wars appeared. Massive armies clashing across Europe. Hundreds of thousands dead in single campaigns. "Napoleon was a genius," Ryan said with something like admiration. "He understood that war was about speed and concentration of force. He lost in the end, but he taught everyone else how modern warfare worked." The display moved forward in time. The American Civil War, the Franco-Prussian War, colonial, conflicts across Africa and Asia. Each one showed humans fighting humans with increasing sophistication and deadliness. By the early 20th century, we had machine guns and artillery and poison gas. We had learned how to kill on an industrial scale. Then came the first real global war. The images became horrific. Trenches filled with mud and bodies. Artillery barrages that lasted days. Gas attacks that left men choking and blind. The numbers of dead scrolled past in the millions. 10 million dead in 4 years, Ryan said quietly. We called it the war to end all wars. We were wrong. The display shifted to show an even larger conflict. Tanks and aircraft and ships engaging across entire continents and oceans. Cities reduced to rubble. Populations starving or fleeing or dying. The Second World War killed maybe 80 million people. We bombed cities full of civilians. We built factories whose only purpose was murder. We created weapons that could level entire cities in a single blast. The mushroom cloud appeared in the display. Vorath felt something cold settle in his chest. He had read about nuclear weapons, but seeing the casual way Ryan discussed them was disturbing. After we dropped atomic bombs on 2 cities, we realized we had a problem. Ryan continued. We had gotten so good at killing that we could now destroy our entire species. The United States and the Soviet Union built enough nuclear weapons to end all life on Earth several times over. We called it mutually assured destruction. If anyone launched, we all died. This is madness, Vorath whispered. Yes, it was. Ryan agreed without shame, but it was our madness and we owned it. For 50 years we lived under the shadow of nuclear annihilation. Every day could have been the last day. We got used to it. The display showed missiles in silos, submarines carrying warheads, bombers on constant alert. The entire planet had been one misunderstanding away from extinction. Then something interesting happened, Ryan said. We started having smaller wars. Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, the Middle East. We learned how to fight without destroying everything. We developed precision weapons and surveillance technology and special operations. We got better at killing exactly who we wanted to kill. More images flashed past, night vision footage of surgical strikes, drones hovering over battlefields, cyber warfare disrupting enemy systems without firing a shot. By the 21st century, we had war down to a science. We could model it and simulate it and predict it. We knew exactly how many bombs it took to destroy a bridge, or how many soldiers you needed to hold a city. War became something we could calculate. Krell spoke for the first time since the presentation began. Why are you telling us this? Are you trying to frighten us? No, Ryan said simply. I'm trying to help you understand. See, every species you've protected probably developed weapons to defend against external threats, animals or weather or other tribes. But humans? We spent 10,000 years fighting ourselves. Every tactic we developed was designed to beat other humans who knew all the same tactics. It was an arms race that never ended. The display shifted to show the unification wars of the late 21st century, human factions fighting each other in space and on Mars and across Earth's orbital installations. The battles were sophisticated and three-dimensional and absolutely brutal. This was our last internal war, Ryan explained. 50 years of scattered conflicts as we tried to decide how humanity would govern itself. Millions died. Orbital stations were destroyed. We even lost the first Mars colony. But we learned something crucial. He paused and took a sip of coffee. We learned that if we kept fighting each other, we would never survive whatever else was out there in the universe. So we made a choice. We unified. Not because we suddenly loved each other, but because we finally understood that our real competition wasn't other humans. It was everything else. The display showed the founding of the Earth Defense Force in 2089. Ships being built, weapons tested, training programs established. Everything organized and purposeful. Once we unified, we took everything we had learned from 10,000 years of war, and we applied it to a single goal. Survival. We built the outer ring. We hollowed out the moon. We created weapons that made our nuclear arsenals look like firecrackers. And we did it all in less than a century because we already knew how. We just had to scale up. Vorath found his voice. But why? Why prepare so extensively when you had not encountered any threats? Ryan looked at him with an expression that might have been pity. Because we knew they were out there. The universe is too big and too old for Earth to be the only world with life. We knew that eventually something would come. Something hostile or hungry or just indifferent to our existence, and when that happened, we wanted to be ready. So you built all of this based on hypothetical threats? We built all of this based on experience, Ryan corrected. Every time in our history that a less advanced civilization met a more advanced one, the less advanced civilization got conquered or destroyed or absorbed. We decided we would never be the less advanced civilization, not if we could help it. The display shifted to show current military readiness, ships on patrol, weapons platforms maintaining watch, training exercises running constantly. The scope was staggering. We run war games every week, Ryan said. We simulate every possible scenario we can imagine. Invasion fleets, biological weapons, dimensional attacks, time travel paradoxes, things that sound like science fiction. We plan for all of it because our history taught us that the unthinkable happens more often than anyone wants to admit. Vex spoke up with genuine curiosity. Do you enjoy this? Planning for war constantly? Ryan's expression became sad. No, most of us hate it. We would much rather explore and create and learn, but we also know that peace only exists when you are strong enough to defend it. The galaxy might be full of peaceful species, but it only takes one hostile civilization to end everything. We refuse to take that chance. What if you meet someone friendly? Vex pressed. What if the galaxy is mostly peaceful? Then we will be peaceful too, Ryan assured him. But we will be peaceful while armed and ready. It's like an old saying we have. Walk softly but carry a big stick. We want to be friends with everyone, but we are prepared to fight anyone. The presentation ended. The holographic display faded to black. Ryan finished his coffee and set down the cup. I know this is a lot to process, he said gently. You came here thinking you were protecting a primitive species. Instead, you found something that has been preparing for this moment for longer than your oldest counselor has been alive. We are not helpless children, Ambassador. We are survivors of 10,000 years of the most brutal and creative warfare any single species has ever waged against itself. And now? Vorath asked. What do you intend to do? That depends on you, Ryan replied. If the Galactic Council wants to be our friends, we would welcome that. If you want to trade knowledge and culture, we would love that. But if you come here demanding we submit to your protection and give up our independence, then we have a problem. Because humans learned a long time ago that freedom is worth fighting for. And we are very, very good at fighting. Krell's color had been shifting throughout the presentation. Now it settled on a shade that indicated deep concern. You would fight the entire Galactic Council? If we had to, Ryan said without hesitation. We would prefer not to. War is expensive and wasteful and tragic. But if you force the choice, we will choose survival every single time. That is what humans do. That is what we have always done. The room fell silent. Vorath sat processing everything he had learned. His mission to Earth had been simple. Offer protection. Establish council authority. Guide another young species into the galactic community. But nothing was simple anymore. These humans were not a young species needing guidance. They were something else entirely. Something that had forged itself in fire and blood and emerged stronger for it. And now they were offering him a choice. Friendship or conflict. Partnership or war. The decision he made in the next few days would determine the relationship between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. And for the first time since arriving on Earth, Ambassador Vorath felt genuinely afraid. Ambassador Vorath returned to his ship and immediately contacted the Galactic Council. The holographic images of the council members appeared around him in a circle. Counselor Threx was the first to speak. He was from a warrior species with thick armor plates and a voice like grinding stone. Ambassador, we have reviewed your reports about Earth's military capabilities. The Council believes you are being deceived. These humans are clearly showing you fabricated installations to discourage our protection. It is a common tactic among primitive species who fear losing their independence. Vorath had expected this response. Counselor, I have seen these installations with my own eyes. I have scanned them with our best equipment. They are real. The humans have military capabilities that rival or exceed our own. Impossible, Threx replied flatly. They have been in space for barely 2 centuries. It takes millennia to develop such technology. Your assessment must be flawed. Then let us test them, another counselor suggested. This was Mira from a species known for diplomatic solutions. Propose a military exercise, a simple war game. If the humans are as capable as the ambassador claims, they will accept. If they are bluffing, they will find excuses to decline. The council debated for an hour. Finally, they reached consensus. They would challenge Earth to a mock battle. The council would send their finest military unit. If Earth could hold their own, then perhaps Vorath's reports were accurate. If not, then the truth would be revealed and the humans would have to accept protection. Vorath delivered the challenge the next morning. President Helen Carter received him in her office with General Kyle Murphy and Colonel Amy Price present. Amy was commander of the Earth Defense Force Rapid Response Division. She was a compact woman in her 40s with short black hair and eyes that never stopped moving. The Galactic Council proposes a military exercise, Vorath explained. A war game to assess comparative capabilities. It would be fought in an uninhabited system with simulation weapons only. No live fire, no actual damage. Simply a test of tactics and technology. What are the terms? Kyle asked. 3 objectives in the test system. A moon, a space station, and a satellite array. First side to capture all 3 objectives wins. The Council will send the Stellar Legion. They are undefeated in over 400 years of service. Amy leaned forward with interest. How many ships in this Stellar Legion? 300 capital ships plus support craft. Approximately 15,000 personnel. They are the finest warriors in Council space. And we can bring how many ships? Whatever you deem appropriate. There is no limit. Amy looked at Kyle. Something passed between them without words. Kyle nodded slightly. We accept, Amy said. When do we start? 3 days from now? That should give both sides time to prepare. After Vorath left, Kyle turned to Amy with a slight smile. How many ships are you taking? I was thinking 12 plus my flagship. Unlucky 13 total. 13 ships against 300. The council is going to think we are insane. Good, Amy replied. Let them think that right up until we win. 3 days later, both fleets met at the designated system. It was unremarkable. A yellow star with 6 planets and an asteroid field. Perfect for military exercises. The Stellar Legion arrived in formation. 300 ships arranged in precise geometric patterns. Their hulls gleamed in the starlight. Their weapons batteries were impressive even in powered-down mode. They moved with the confidence of a force that had never known defeat. The human fleet arrived quietly. 13 ships that looked small compared to the Legion's massive dreadnoughts. Amy's flagship was the EDS Resilient, a heavy cruiser that was only 2 years old. The other 12 ships were a mix of destroyers and frigates. They hung in space without formation, looking almost casual. Counselor Threx observed from a command ship, positioned safely outside the combat zone. Vorath stood beside him watching the tactical displays. The wargame rules were simple. Simulation weapons would register hits on target ships. 3 hits and a ship was considered disabled and out of the game. First side to hold all 3 objectives for a full hour won. This will be educational for them, Threx said confidently. The Legion will show them what real military power looks like. Then perhaps they will accept our protection with proper gratitude. The timer started. Both sides were free to move. The Stellar Legion immediately divided into 3 groups of 100 ships each. Each group moved toward one of the objectives. It was textbook strategy, overwhelming force at each target. The humans would have to split their tiny fleet and would be crushed at each location. But the human ships did not split up. They did not move toward the objectives. They simply vanished. Threx stared at the tactical display in confusion. Where did they go? Stealth systems, Vorath said quietly. Like their outer ring platforms. For 2 hours the Legion searched. Their sensors swept the system constantly. They found nothing. The 3 groups reached the objectives and established defensive positions. 100 ships guarding each target. It should have been impossible to dislodge them. Then all 3 objectives lit up simultaneously. The human ships had somehow bypassed the entire Legion fleet. They were at the objectives broadcasting the capture signal. The simulation registered human control. How? Threx demanded. How did they get past our sensors? Amy's voice came through the communication channel. She sounded cheerful. Stealth is just one advantage. Want to try round 2? Threx ordered the Legion to retake the objectives. All 300 ships converged on the targets. Surely they would catch the humans now. But when they arrived, the human ships were gone again. And 30 minutes later, different objectives lit up with human markers. The 13 ships had moved through the Legion fleet again without being detected. The second round lasted 45 minutes. The third round lasted 12. Each time the human ships appeared exactly where they wanted to be and disappeared before the Legion could respond. They moved like ghosts, like predators playing with prey. It was humiliating. After the third round, Threx called a halt. His pride was wounded, but he was not stupid. How are you doing this? Our sensors are the best in council space. You should not be able to hide from us. Amy brought the Resilient into view along with her 12 escort ships. Your sensors are excellent for finding ships that do not want to hide. But humans have been hiding from each other for thousands of years. We know every trick, every technique, every way to make ourselves invisible. We learned it fighting enemies who knew we were trying to hide and were actively looking for us. She paused to let that sink in. Your Legion fights like they have been the dominant force for centuries. They move in formation. They follow doctrine. They expect the enemy to fight fair. But we learned long ago that fair fights are for sports. In real combat, you do whatever it takes to win. You use terrain and deception and surprise. You hit where the enemy is not looking and you are gone before they can respond. Krell had been analyzing the human movements throughout the exercise. You did not just hide. You predicted our responses. You knew where we would move before we moved. Of course, Amy confirmed. We have been studying your tactics since you arrived. Your formation patterns, your communication protocols, your standard responses to various situations. We ran simulations and predicted exactly how you would react. Then we planned accordingly. That is dishonorable, Threx protested. That is survival. Amy corrected. In a real fight, there is no honor. There is only winning and losing, living and dying. You fight to win or you die trying. Anything else is just pretending. Vorath spoke quietly to Threx. I told you they were different. They do not think like we do. They have no concept of fighting for glory or following rules of engagement. They fight to survive and they use every advantage they can find. Lieutenant Sophie Andrews had been watching from a shuttle nearby. Now she opened a channel. If it helps, the Legion fought very well. Your formations were solid and your response times were excellent. You just have not fought anyone who really wanted to hurt you in a very long time. You forgot that war is about more than who has the bigger ships. Threx was silent for a long moment. Finally he spoke. I need to report to the Council. This exercise is concluded. After the Council ships departed, the human fleet regrouped. Amy opened a channel to all her ships. Good work, everyone. That went exactly as planned. Drinks are on me when we get back to Earth. Commander Jake Peterson contacted her from one of the destroyers. Did you see their faces when we took all 3 objectives in the first round? I thought Threx was going to have a breakdown. Play nice, Jake. They meant well. They just did not understand what they were dealing with. Do you think they will leave us alone now? Maybe. Or maybe they will try something else. Either way, we showed them the truth. We are not helpless and we do not need their protection. Back on the Resilient, Amy stood on the bridge looking at the tactical displays. The exercise had been almost too easy. The Legion was competent but predictable. They had clearly never fought an enemy that refused to play by their rules. That worried her more than she wanted to admit. If the Council's finest warriors were this easy to defeat, what did that say about the galaxy's ability to defend itself? She thought about the history Admiral Ryan Cooper had shown the Council delegation. 10,000 years of humans fighting humans. Every trick and tactic refined through countless battles. Every strategy tested against enemies who knew all the same strategies. Humanity had become the ultimate survivors not through strength or technology, but through sheer stubborn refusal to quit. And now that experience was being applied to galactic-scale warfare. Earth had capabilities the Council could not imagine. Weapons they had not revealed. Ships they had not shown. Plans within plans within plans. The exercise had been a test, but humanity had been holding back. Way back, Sophie contacted her on a private channel. Colonel, do you think we should have let them win at least one round? You know, to make them feel better. No, Amy replied firmly. They needed to see the truth. Half measures would only confuse things. Now they know exactly what we are capable of. Or at least they think they do. You mean there is more? Sophie, there is always more. Rule number 1 of human warfare. Never show your enemy everything you have. Always keep something in reserve. Always have a backup plan. And if they come back with a bigger fleet, Amy smiled. Then we show them something new. That is the advantage of fighting yourself for 10,000 years. You learn that there is always another trick, always another tactic, always another way to win. We have barely scratched the surface of what Earth can do. The human fleet turned toward home. Behind them, the empty system returned to silence. But something had changed. The Galactic Council had come to test humanity and found themselves tested instead. They had brought their finest warriors and watched them be defeated by a force 1/23 their size. The rules of galactic politics had just been rewritten, and nobody, including the humans themselves, was entirely sure what would happen next. 3 weeks passed after the war games, and an uneasy calm settled between Earth and the Galactic Council. Vorath remained on Earth filing reports and trying to explain to the Council exactly what humanity represented. Most counselors still believed the exercise had been a fluke, or that the humans had somehow cheated. Threx was particularly insistent that a larger force would easily overcome Earth's tricks. Then the alarm started. It was early morning in New Geneva when every deep space sensor in the solar system began screaming warnings. Something massive had just entered the edge of the system, something that registered on scanners as biological, but was moving faster than any natural organism should be able to move. General Kyle Murphy was in the command center within minutes. The tactical display showed a dark mass spreading across the outer system like ink in water, millions of individual signals that moved together with terrifying coordination. What am I looking at? Kyle demanded. The Calrith swarm, sir, one of the sensor operators replied with a voice that shook slightly. At least 3 million bioships. Maybe more. They just jumped in past Neptune and they are heading straight for us. Kyle felt his blood turn cold. The Calrith swarm was the nightmare the Galactic Council had warned them about. a species that consumed all biological matter in its path. They had destroyed 17 civilizations according to council records. And now they were here. He opened a priority channel to Ambassador Vorath. The alien appeared on screen looking even more panicked than Kyle felt. "You must evacuate immediately," Vorath said without preamble. "The Calreth swarm cannot be stopped. Even with our combined forces, we do not have enough firepower. You need to get as many people off planet as possible before they arrive." "How long do we have?" "At their current speed, maybe 18 hours. Please, General, you must begin evacuation now. Every minute counts." Kyle closed the channel and looked at the tactical display. 18 hours. Not enough time to evacuate even a fraction of Earth's population. He opened another channel, this one to President Helen Carter. "Ma'am, we have a situation." Helen listened to his brief report without interruption. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke with a calm that Kyle had always admired. "General Murphy, activate all defense systems. Full military mobilization. Contact Colonel Price and Admiral Cooper. Tell them it is time." "Yes, ma'am." "What about evacuation?" "We are not evacuating. This is our home. We defend it." Kyle felt something settle in his chest. Relief maybe, or just acceptance? "Understood. Beginning defense protocols now." Across the solar system, Earth's military came alive. The outer ring platforms powered up their reactors. The lunar shipyards opened their hangar doors. Ships that had been on patrol turned toward the incoming threat. Weapons that had never been fired in anger charged their capacitors. Soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this moment moved to their stations. Colonel Amy Price stood on the bridge of the EDS Resilient watching the swarm approach. Her fleet of 200 capital ships was forming up near Mars. It looked impressive until you compared it to the millions of Calreth bioships spreading across the outer system. Call. "Ships, this is Colonel Price. You all know what is coming. You all know what is at stake. Behind us is Earth. Behind us is everything we have ever loved or cared about. The Calreth think we are easy prey. They think we will run or surrender or die quietly. Let us show them what happens when you threaten humanity." The response came back from 200 ships, thousands of voices united in a single word. "Hurrah!" The Calreth swarm reached Neptune first. The bioships were horrible to look at. Each one was a twisted mass of chitin and teeth and grasping limbs. They moved like insects but thought like a hive mind. They had no concept of mercy or negotiation. They only consumed. The outer ring opened fire. 1,500 weapons platforms released everything they had. Directed energy beams powerful enough to vaporize asteroids tore into the swarm's leading edge. Each beam carved through dozens of bioships. The Calreth died by the thousands in the first seconds, but there were millions more behind them. The swarm adapted quickly. The bioships began to spread out and change their approach vectors. They learned from each loss and modified their tactics. This was why they were so dangerous. They were not stupid animals. They were a collective intelligence that could evolve strategies in real time. Second wave fire, Kyle ordered from Earth Command. The gravitational weapons activated. Massive distortions in space-time appeared throughout the swarm. Bioships by the thousands were crushed into singularities or torn apart by tidal forces. The dying Calreth screamed across radio frequencies that made human equipment crackle with interference. The swarm pressed forward. It reached Uranus and flowed around the planet like a river around a stone. The bioships were learning to avoid the obvious kill zones. They were adapting faster than the simulations had predicted. "Launch Jupiter package," Kyle commanded. Jupiter's 4 largest moons each opened hatches that had been hidden for 60 years. Thousands of missiles streaked out. These were not conventional weapons. Each missile contained a micro-fusion warhead designed to release energy in a specific pattern. When they detonated throughout the swarm, the explosions created a chain reaction. Energy cascaded from one bioship to another. Entire sections of the swarm simply ceased to exist, but still they came. By the time the Calreth reached Saturn, they had lost over half their numbers. But that still left more than 1 million bioships. They swept past Saturn's rings, which turned out to be disguised weapons platforms. The platforms opened fire with kinetic weapons. Simple but effective. Metal slugs moving at relativistic speeds punched through bioship armor like it was paper. The swarm's numbers continued to fall. But they were learning. They started using their own dead as shields. They moved in tighter formations. They sacrificed the outer ships to protect the inner core, and they kept coming. "All ships engage," Amy ordered as the swarm reached the asteroid belt. Her fleet of 200 ships hit the swarm from multiple angles. They did not try to match numbers. Instead, they focused on creating chaos, breaking up the swarm's cohesion, forcing the bioships to respond to threats from every direction. The battle became a whirling melee. Human ships darted in and out, firing and then disappearing behind asteroids. Calreth bioships swarmed after them but found only empty space. The humans were using the same tactics from the war games, but now with live weapons and real stakes. Admiral Ryan Cooper commanded a second fleet hiding near the sun. He watched the battle unfold and waited for the right moment. The Calreth were fully committed now. They were pushing toward Earth with everything they had. Their entire force was in the inner system. All ships prepare to jump, Ryan ordered calmly. His fleet of 100 dreadnoughts powered up their jump drives. These were the newest ships in Earth's arsenal. Bigger and more heavily armed than anything the Galactic Council had. Each one carried enough firepower to level a continent. Execute jump. The dreadnoughts materialized directly behind the Calreth swarm. The bioships suddenly found themselves trapped between Amy's fleet in front and Ryan's fleet behind. They tried to split and respond to both threats, but humans had been fighting in 3 dimensions for over a century. They knew how to use space itself as a weapon. All ships fire at will, Ryan said. The dreadnoughts unleashed everything. Energy weapons that had been charging since the battle began. Missiles that tracked multiple targets simultaneously. Point defense systems that created walls of fire no bioship could penetrate. The Calreth died in waves. The battle raged for 6 hours. Slowly and methodically, the human fleets ground down the swarm. Every tactic the Calreth tried, humans had a counter for. Every adaptation was met with a new strategy. This was what 10,000 years of warfare had created. A species that could outthink and outfight anything the universe threw at them. When the last Calreth bioship was destroyed, an eerie silence fell across the solar system. Human ships hung in space, surrounded by debris fields that stretched for millions of kilometers. They had won. Earth was safe. On his ship at the edge of the system, Vorath watched in stunned disbelief. The Calreth swarm had destroyed 17 civilizations. The Galactic Council had never managed to defeat them in open battle. The standard response was to evacuate and abandon entire systems. But humanity had just annihilated them. His communication console activated. President Helen Carter appeared on screen. She looked tired, but she was smiling. Ambassador Vorath, I hope you are well. I wanted to let you know that the threat has been neutralized. Earth is secure, I saw, Vorath managed. How? The Calreth have never been defeated like this. How did you know what to do? We did not know, Helen admitted. We prepared for every possibility and hoped our preparations were enough. Turns out they were, barely. Barely. You destroyed millions of bioships with minimal losses. We lost 37 ships and over 2,000 personnel, Helen said quietly. That is not minimal to us. Each of those people had families and friends and futures. We will mourn them. But yes, the defense was successful. Vorath was silent for a moment, processing everything. Then he spoke carefully. President Carter, the Galactic Council, offered to protect Earth. I think we need to discuss a new arrangement. What did you have in mind? What if Earth protected the Council instead? Your military capabilities far exceed anything we possess. Your tactical thinking is beyond our experience. If the Calreth attack another Council world, we would not be able to stop them. But you could, Helen smiled. We would be happy to help protect Council worlds, Ambassador. But not as conquerors or overlords, as partners, as allies. We share resources and knowledge. We defend each other. We face the galaxy together as equals. The Council may not agree to equal partnership. They are used to being in charge. Then they can defend themselves, Helen said pleasantly. We are offering friendship, not subjugation. Take it or leave it. Vorath thought about what he had seen over the past few weeks. The hidden weapons, the hollowed moon, the tactical brilliance, the sheer stubborn refusal to quit. Humanity was not going to submit to anyone. They had fought themselves for millennia and emerged stronger. They had just defeated a threat that terrified the entire galaxy, and they had done it while offering partnership rather than demanding tribute. I will relay your offer to the Council, Vorath said, and I will recommend they accept. You have earned our respect, President Carter. More than that, you have earned our gratitude. Thank you, Ambassador. Now, if you will excuse me, I have funerals to attend. We honor our dead. The transmission ended. Vorath sat alone with his thoughts. 3 months ago, he had come to Earth expecting to guide a primitive species. Instead, he had discovered humanity, and the galaxy would never be the same. On Earth, Colonel Amy Price stood with Commander Jake Peterson looking up at the night sky. The debris from the battle was visible as shooting stars burning up in the atmosphere. "Think there are more of them out there?" Jake asked. "Probably," Amy replied. "The universe is a big place. There is always something bigger and meaner waiting somewhere. And we will be ready. We will figure it out. That is what humans do. We adapt, we survive, we overcome. It has worked for 10,000 years. No reason to stop now." Jake smiled. "So what happens next?" "Next we rebuild. We learn from this battle, we get better. And when the next threat comes, we will be ready. Because that is who we are. That is what it means to be human." Above them, the stars shone cold and distant. Somewhere out there were threats humanity had not yet imagined. Challenges that would test them in ways the Calreth never could. But Earth would face them. Not because humans were the strongest or the smartest or the bravest, but because they simply refused to quit. And in a universe full of dangers, that stubborn refusal to surrender might just be the most powerful weapon of all.